This might be a little bit longer, but I promise you that the second part will be shorter. Okay, so let me show you this part. I want to tell you how to use metamaterial to manipulate light polarizations. I will tell you how can we do it in the microwave regime and also in the visible regime. This is the outline of this part. The entire work is done by a previous student, Hall, who is now a postdoc in Sweden. So I first introduce the background and motivations, and then I give you a general model argument, and then I show you how can we realize the idea in microwave regime, and then we transfer to visible light regime, and then I conclude. So background is actually there are quite conventional, several conventional means to manipulate photon polarizations. You know, EM wave is a vector wave, so it has the polarizations. And for example, you can use wide grid polarizer. You can also use the bifurcated crystals, and you can use these diachronic crystals, and you can use the Bruce angle effect. However, now that we have a metamaterial, and I have already introduced you this morning that metamaterial has quite a lot of anomalous properties. So the question is, can we employ metamaterials to manipulate light polarizations? If you can, what's the advantages and disadvantages compared with conventional means? This is our motivations. So before I go into details, I want to just show you the concept of the polarization control. It's very simple concept. Now suppose you consider light shining from air instantly, normally instantly on the interface between air and the metamaterial. Now that you have a metamaterial, you have freedom to design, to choose the value of its dielectric constant and also the mu tensor. So basically, epsilon xy and mu xy are freely changeable. So let us consider these situations. Now suppose the incident angle is such that, the polarization angle is such that the phi equals to 45 degrees. And then an incident wave takes this polarization, E not x plus y. So after reflection, the reflecting wave will take these polarizations, noting that Rx and Ry might not be the same because the system is inherently anisotropic. Now I have already told you that reflection coefficient for these two values are governed by the impedance along these two directions. So you have this one, and the Zx and Zy are governed by the impedance of these materials. Now it's very easy to find if this equation is satisfied, Zx times Zy equals to 1. You will have this condition. That means Rx equals to minus Iy. This is very easy to calculate. I think you can just write down in the paper and you can get this condition. And in pain, if this condition is satisfied, you can find that the reflected wave will take a polarization direction which is just opposite, perpendicular to the incident direction. So at this condition, we can convert the polarizations completely to its current direction after reflection. So this picture shows what happens here. For example, if you have an instant wave polarization like this, after reflection, because Rx and Ry are just out of phase, and then eventually the reflected wave will take a polarization which is perpendicular to the instant polarization. So this is the idea of the polarization control. So the key to convert polarization is to achieve this condition. Now, let me remind you that the x and zy are just impedance along two directions. So that means if you want to convert the polarization of reflection, you have to realize a sort of EM symmetry between two axes. For the microwave regime where we have PEC, so this condition actually is very easy to realize. You can just, a special solution is that for one direction, you can realize the system acts as a PEC, for the perfect electric conductor. And meanwhile, you achieve the PMC for another direction. Then if this condition is satisfied, and then you can completely convert the correlations. But how can we do it in a visible line? In visible line, we do not have PEC at all. However, if you can change the polarization, change the magnitude parameters, you can adjust in the parameter to realize this, to let this condition to match. You can still realize the polarization conversion in visible light. Now let me introduce to you how can we do it in the microwave visualization. In microwave, we consider this double-layer systems. The system consists of two layers. The first layer is an anisotropic magnetic material, and the second layer is a perfect metal system. And we calculate the situation where an incident light takes an arbitrary incident angle and arbitrary incident polarizations. And basically, because of the anisotropy, you cannot use the standard 2x2 transfer matrix method. You have to use the 4x4 transfer matrix method. Basically, you can all the derivation of this method have been published in this paper, and basically you can do everything. I mean, you can calculate the response of the incident wave after reflection by this double-layer system. Let me show you the result. If the top magnetic layer takes this kind of magnetic resonance behavior, when the incident wave takes these polarizations, and basically the reflected wave will no longer be a single S-polarized wave. It contains both S-polarized wave and a P-polarized wave. And then we can define a polarization conversion ratio, which is defined as a PCR, which is a measure, which is a quantity to measure how much energy is converted from the from the original S-polarized wave to P-polarized after reflection. And for this model, you can find that we did a calculation, and we found that at some particular incident angle and at some particular frequency, we do have two bands where the PCR value is perfectly defined. So that means at these two frequencies, light can convert its polarization completely. Another result is about the polarization states. In fact, we found that the resulting polarization pattern of the reflected wave is very rich. And in fact, it can, although the incident wave is a linear incident, is linear polarized, after reflection by this material plate, all kind of polarizations, including linear, circular, elliptical, are realizable. For example, for here, it is a circular polarized, and here elliptical polarized, and here we have a reflected linear polarized. Okay, now the question is how can we make this sample? If you listen carefully the lecture that I gave this morning, you will find that actually this is not difficult to realize. And this is actually just a three-layer system, and this is a relaxed system that we designed. And we fabricate these materials, and then we to Zhejiang University to collaborate Professor Zhang's group to perform the microwave measurement. And please trust me, and we did the calculation, and we found that this system can be indeed perfectly described by this effective immediate model. Here comes the experimental simulation result. And the solid line is the this is blue symbols are FDD simulation, and the open circles are experiment result. And you do find that at this particular two frequencies, two situations, we do find that PCR value are equals to 1. And we do have excellent agreement between the TMM model calculation and the FDD simulations and experimental results. And this paper is published 2 years ago. So what's the underlying mechanism? So I already told you that for this kind of double-layer system, the reflection phase is quite unusual. And because of the anisotropy at the two frequencies, we do have, for one polarization, we have the in-phase reflection, and simultaneously for another polarization, the incident wave is an out-of-phase reflection. So that means for these two frequencies, this and this, we can realize this condition. That means for one direction we have a PC, and for another direction we have PMC simultaneously. So that's why we can repeat convert the polarization completely. And then we studied the system in detail, and we found that actually there are more interesting things happens. For example, we found that actually we not only can convert the polarization completely to its core direction, but also we can rotate the polarization direction by an arbitrary incident angle. You may say that, wow, that's trivial things because the Faraday effect is just such kind of effect. However, you must remember that here the system is very, very thin, but for Faraday effect, you have to have a very thick sample to rotate some angle of polarizations. So for more details, please refer to these PRB permutations. Now the question is, can we go to visible? I've already told you that it's not easy to realize PEC or PMC as visible due to the loss of the realized materials. Actually, I looked into I searched the literature and I only found these papers for the optical magnetic systems. However, I mentioned to you that the polarization control is still possible because we can design appropriate optical materials which with changeable epsilon mu to still let the condition satisfied. So this is a sample of optical magnetic material that we fabricate. Basically, it's still a 3-layer system. This is the inner dielectric separator, and this is the God slab, and this is the cross-section view of this bar system. This is top view of these bar systems, and this is some structural details. And we did a sample. One of my colleagues did a sample in Tokyo, and this is the SEM image of this sample, which looks quite nice. And then we took the sample to the to our experimental collaborators, and this is some experiment setup. I won't bother you about the details. So basically, we can measure the reflection and also the for the different polarization the reflection. So the first step is we measure the direct reflection spectrum. By direct, I mean we let the E vector to parallel to one of the optic axes. So in this case, we do not have any optical polarization rotation at all because we are along one of the optic axes. And you found that for two polarization, we have reflection spectrum like this, and we did FDD simulations, and we do find that reasonable agreement we found. And the very interesting happens if you look at the reflection phase change. And you find that the reflection phase for these two directions here, the changes are almost out of phase here. So that means something must happen here. Indeed, we let the polarization angle to not along one of the optic axis, but in between x and y. And we did a calculation again. Now we do find very strong polarization converted signal, which is denoted by RSP. That means when we have S-porous wave and we measure the reflection wave taking the P-porous. So we do find that's a peak here. And if you denote the value, if you depict the spectrum of PCR, you find that PCR here is very strong. That means for this frequency regime, we can have a very strong polarization control. In particular, we found that the PCR can be as high as 96%, as a wavelength around 700 nanometers. And we did some simulation, and we found that reasonable agreement with this experiment. Now what's the filter mechanism? So we calculate from the reflection spectrum, both the amplitude and also the reflection phase. We can retrieve the effective parameters of these optical materials. And indeed, we found that this epsilon x, epsilon y, and mu x, mu y are all described, very well described by our Lorentz model, which consists of a series of resonances. And the physics here for optimal material is that we not only have magnetic resonance, but also have electron resonance here, which is quite different from the original microwave example. So that's why we can still tune the resonance positions so that we can make the EM wave reciprocal condition to satisfy. So the physical picture is quite clear. So we can realize we can make this condition to be satisfied at some frequencies. For this particular situation, we have two frequencies, this frequency and this frequency. Then this condition is realized. So you can see that the x times the y is almost 1. So then at this particular two frequencies, the polarization control is possible. So the physics is actually we can tune the resonance positions to achieve a so-called EM reciprocal symmetry. By reciprocal symmetry, I mean if you look y-axis more like E electron resonance, you have to make another direction more like magnetic. So if you have a PEC, you have to have a PMC. But if you do not have a PEC, you only have some kind of E resonance, you have to have another kind of magnetic resonance along another direction. So compared with conventional means, our system has some advantage. The first one is the system is much thinner than wavelengths. This is just the characteristics of the metamaterial concept. The total signals of our system is only this value, and the wavelength is this value. And also another advantage is based on fraction geometry. And also it has a new mechanism involving both E resonance and magnetic resonance of metamaterial. So we hope that it could be useful in some particular situations. Actually, after our microwave experiment done, there are quite some follow-up works on the polarization control. For example, Nanny group, they fabricated example in infrared frequency region and found they can manipulate the transmission wave polarizations. And more recently, a group from Southeastern University, led by Professor Tijun Cui, they also did another design, which is in microwave frequency region. They also found that transmitting wave, the polarization can be effectively manipulated. So let me summarize this part. We employ metamaterials. We can manipulate polarization properties of EM wave efficiently. We have already obtained some results. For example, we can completely change the polarization conversion direction in microwave, and we have very high efficiency and invisible. And we can actually rotate the polarization angle arbitrarily, which is quite similar to the Faraday effect. And we can also generate not only linear polarized, but also circular and elliptical polarized states. And this is some related publications. I think I just continue to introduce another. And then after that, I can take some questions. So the next part I will introduce you is about the resonance properties of metallic ring systems. The entire work is based on the recent review, which will appear quickly in material today. It's, the work is in collaboration with Professor S.T. Tree from University of Delaware in the US. Let me acknowledge my two students, Xueqing Huang and Yi Zhang, who contribute to this work. And I will first tell you why we do that, and then I will develop this theory, and then I will apply the theory to study the single ring SRR and double ring SRR, and also the broadside copper SRR. Okay, I think you have already know that the metallic ring system is very important because it's just this kind of system can provide a magnetic response. So otherwise, we cannot achieve any metamaterial at all. However, the previous series for this kind of system is not so satisfying. If you look at the pioneering work of Pendry, you will find there's two problems. The first problem is that it only considers the not incompletely set of inductive capacitive effect. Actually, he treated each ring as a single element with a fixed L and M. And more seriously, actually, the calculations for L and C are not for cylinders, but rather are for the cylinders rather for rings. Actually, if you look at his paper carefully. Recently, there are some developments to improve this. Basically, the authors of this paper, they divided this ring into small different parts, and then by doing so, they can consider more inductive and capacitive effect. However, it's not still the problem exists because it's not completely considered, and also the parameters are determined empirically, not from first principle. So in collaboration with Professor Chi, we established a theory which can consider the inductive capacitive effect completely. However, it is within the quasi-static limit. It can calculate the involved parameters L and C rigorously, and also, but the limitation, and then it is at that time limited to ring geometry. Now we have my colleague Professor Chi has already explained the theory to many other topological. Now let me give you some mathematics. I think maybe you have already been very tired. Maybe it's very abstract. However, I just want to make sure that you can. Okay, let me consider a ring geometry like this, and then suppose there is some current flowing on inside the ring. Then you can very easily to calculate the inductive field EL by using the Faraday's law. So basically, EL is a function of J. And also, you can use the charge current conservation law to get the charge density rho. If you can get this quantity, you can use Coulomb's law to calculate the capacitance field. So basically, I think you can be convinced that both EL and EC are functional of J. In the same limit, you can assume the current like this. This is basically a delta function, and then you can expand every quantity into a Fourier series, which is a function of phi. Phi is the angle. And then after some very complicated mathematics, you can end up with this equation. So with this equation, I think you can know that the inductance and capacitance are not only just one mode, but also for all the modes. So that's why we said that in previous theory, they only consider the dominant mode. They only consider some of the inductance and capacitance mode. So I don't bother you how to calculate. Now the question is, how can you calculate this? Still, the J is not determined. So you can use Ohm's law to relate back the J to the external field and the EL and EC. And eventually you can end up with the eigenvalue problem. If you are from physics department, you will be very familiar with this equation because this is quite like a Hamiltonian for the quantum particle. And then the matrix is like this. So basically you can solve this equation and you can get everything. Now how can we determine the resonance frequency and the dipole moment? The resonance frequency turns out to be determined by this equation. That means you have to have minimized eigenvalue. So at which frequency that eigenvalue is minimized, you can get a resonance. So basically you can get it, when you get this resonance, you can calculate everything, including both the p dipole and m dipole. So we apply this theory to study the single ring SRR. We do find a series of resonance here. And we use plane wave to study its resonance properties. No, I'm sorry. We calculate the resonance, the electrical dipole moment and magnetic dipole moment of the series mode. And then we find that, in fact, the plane wave can excite only a particular set of resonance. Okay, so I just calculate. For different kind of plane wave, you can excite different modes. Then we perform FTD simulations to verify these auxiliary predictions. And we do find this is FTD simulated transmission dips, and this is the dipole moment resonance. And we do find the one-by-one correspondence between the transmission dips here and also the dipole moment peak here. Because for each resonance, we have a transmission dip. This is very easy to understand. Okay. We also apply the theory to study the double ring SRR, and we found that more physics here. For the double ring, because we have two rings, the interaction between these two rings will split each single ring mode to a pair of mode. And each mode will have a different symmetry. And this turned out to be very interesting physics, because you can find that for this mode, the frequency is much lower than the corresponding single ring mode. And if you can make the ring separation to be smaller, and you can have this resonance mode to become much lower, much lower. Again, we verify this, all this stuff by FTD simulations. And interesting here is that we derived the analytical formula to describe the relative frequency shift. I just remind you that this frequency is derived from the single ring mode. However, there's a frequency shift. So we derived a analytical formula to describe this relative frequency shift. And we found this very simple formula works very well to describe the series of experimental data, which is done by a Turkish group. So what have been done so far for two rings? One is a single ring and a double ring. However, we all assume that the ring have a circular cross-section. But the situation is that the relaxed SRR actually has a rectangular cross-section. For example, you can see this one, and also this one. So all of these split ring resonators has a rectangular cross-section. So the motivation, one, is can we apply a theory to extend such kind of SR with rectangular cross-section? Another interesting thing is that if you look at literature, you will find that there are quite some efforts to fabricate a three-dimensional system which can exhibit three-dimensional magnetic response. For this group, which is led by Skulis, they fabricate a three-dimensional array of SRR, and they want to have an isotropic three-dimensional left-handed materials. And also for this group, I think this is Marcus group, they also use these kind of things. So we have another motivation. Is that possible? We do not fabricate a three-dimensional array, but we fabricate a planar structure, but yet the structure can achieve a three-dimensional magnetic response. So you must say, oh, you are crazy. How can you use this planar structure to support magnetic response along all directions? But the fact is, it is possible. So we first extend the theory to consider to let the theory to be considered. To let the theory can consider the cross-section case. I mean the rectangular cross-section case. This is very complicated. I don't go into details. So let me show you the result. And then we consider a situation where the two rings are like this. Okay, I think I should give you the details of the structure. Okay. So now we consider like the geometry like this. There's two rings, but the two rings are on the different planes, and they are strongly coupled to each other. And then we apply the theory to study the EM response of these structures. Okay. you may say that, okay, the transmission, the resonant property is quite similar to the coplanar double range system. Indeed it is. For this system, again, the single mode has split into a mode pair. However, if you look at the polarization, if you look at the dipole moment processed by this mode, you will find that a new things happens. Because we have two new transverse magnetizations. You have this structure, but you have mx and my along these planar dimensions. So usually, if you only have a split ring, you only have an mz component. So again, we performed the FDD simulations and found everything is conforming. Okay, I do not go into details of this. I think it's too abstract. Cool. Okay, let me just give you some current and attribute distributions of these several modes of these structures. On the plane, you find that the fourth mode pair is actually governed by this current distribution. The current flowing along this direction, along this, and ends on this gap. And for the second mode pair, the current is quite different. The current is flowing like this, simultaneously, like this. And why we have another splitting? Because in the perpendicular directions, the two rings are symmetrical coupled or anti-symmetric coupled. This is again symmetric coupled, and anti-symmetric coupled. So that's why we have so rich EM wave properties of these structures. The most interesting thing that actually we can use this structure, which is actually a planar structure, to construct a system which can exhibit 3D magnetic response. For this kind of unit cell, naively we have an MZ component. And also because the coupling between this layer and this layer, we can have MX and MY direction, magnetic moment. So indeed, we perform perform FDD simulations, and we found that indeed we do have this system to exhibit magnetic response along three directions simultaneously. Okay, let me conclude this part. Within the quasi-static limit, we have established a rigorous mode expansion theory. I mean, the rigorous in the quasi-static limit is not in the full wave limit. And also we apply this theory to study several XR systems, and the ideas I think can be extended to other systems. So this is some related publications, and with that I think we can take a rest, and I can take some questions for this part.
Other questions?
What are the applications of the polarization control?
Sorry?
What are the applications?
Applications?
Yeah.
Okay, can control polarization.
It's okay, but there are many other methods of controlling polarizations.
Yeah, you are right. I think our method has some advantage because usually the polarization control by conventional means is transmitted geometry. But sometimes, for some kind of situation, you cannot use the transmission geometry. You have to use reflection geometry. And in this situation, our scheme can have applications.
So we can get any kind of polarization or only 180 degree
In
polarization?
principle, we can get upon design, but we have to change carefully the design, and also we can change the frequency of this. In principle, if you give me the target frequency, you give me the how you want to change the position, I can give you design. Yes.
So maybe in the continuation of this question, would this approach allow you to also control polarization state of negatively refracted wave line? Unlike negatively refracted, the negative index media that we discussed before. And so can you combine this approach of polarization control with negative refraction
indeed.
and therefore control
Yeah, indeed. Actually, there's one group in Spanish. They have a very clever idea. They actually just use the negative index materials. So they fabricate a sample, which is a negative index along rate direction and a positive index along rate direction. So if you shine a line along the axis between these two ones, and then the line will separate to two beams. One beam gain a negative phase combination, another beam gain positive phase combination, and then the combined beam will be different. So that's, yeah, indeed, we are also interested in the control transmit geometry model, which obviously the negative index has somewhat more.
Are there more questions? If not, we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Let us thank our speakers.
And in recent years, I think from about 10 years ago, people became interested in the opposite phenomenon, which is transparency. So actually, they want to have some situations where otherwise the system is okay. However, after some means, it becomes transparent. So this is the simple description of the motivations. Now we already have some very exciting studies on the transparency. The most famous one is done by Professor Epson, which is about the surface plasma resonance-induced high transmission. And after that, John Pendry proposed another idea, which is about the favorable fluorescence of Perlin wave inside through the synthesis. They found that by adjusting the thickness of this layer, some high transmission peaks can appear, which is otherwise opaque for the system. And also, there's another paper done by Professor Ngeta in the beginning years of the negative index material. They found that for the super negative ENG material means that the effective dielectric constant is negative. The MENG material means the mu is negative. You see that for these two materials, each of them independently is opaque. However, if you combine these two, you'll find a particular interface resonance to guide photon tunneling from here to here to make the system transparent. So you already see that there are quite a lot of mechanisms to have the transparency. So our motivation is to propose more and to have more interesting phenomena. And indeed, in recent years, we have found that three different kinds of transparency mechanism. The first one is the ADE structure, the second one, and the third one is like this. Okay, let me first describe to you the ADE tunneling. So the motivation is very simple. Suppose you have a layer with negative epsilon. Immediately you understand that this system is opaque for photons. That's why metal is can behave like a mirror in the visible frequency. Now, our motivation is, can we introduce the high transmissions through this metal, for example, through this opaque media with negative epsilon? And immediately you can find, you understand that if you can induce some kind of resonance from here, and you can also have another resonance in this interface, upon a coupling of this resonance, you can have a perfect transmission through this opaque media. So the idea is very simple, however, the question is how can you design or induce such kind of resonance? So the surface plasma is one such resonance. Unfortunately, surface plasma is not good one, because if you look at the surface plasma dispersion, you will find that Perlin wave can never excite a surface plasma on a flat metal surface. Because in Perlin wave is in this region, the maximum k vector is bounded by this line. Unfortunately, for a surface plasma, its k vector is always larger than the Brownian wave k vector omega c line. So that's why usually we claim that the Brownian wave or the plane wave can never excite a surface plasma on a flat metal surface. So you cannot excite this surface plasma resonance naively. A clever group, many years ago, they found that actually you can indeed make this material transparent by exciting the surface plasma. However, you cannot excite this surface plasma by simply using a plane wave. You have to use a so-called prism coupler to induce a large enough k vector to excite the surface plasma. Indeed, they use the technique of prism coupler to induce the surface plasma resonance here, and they found that significantly enhanced transparency through this zero step, which is otherwise opaque. Another method is that you can induce black scatterings to make the otherwise unexcited surface plasma to an excitable surface plasma. So let me go back to the surface plasma dispersion. So the problem now is you have too large k vector. Now the idea is if you can add a periodicity, the Brilliant zone scattering will fall back this branch onto the first Brilliant zone, so that a Brownian wave can couple to the surface plasma. That's the idea of black scattering. So indeed, Thomas Epson found that indeed, if you drill the magnetic field by a periodic surveillance hole, and then you find that the surface plasma can be excited by the plane wave. Another different type of resonance is the so-called FT resonance. And Pendry, in his paper, said that if you drill some narrow slits through the magnetic field, and no matter how thin the slit is, because for one particular polarized wave, the wave inside this slit is still propagating. So they can form a kind of FP resonance across this magnetic field, so that when this condition is met, Professor Pendry's group found that it can support high transmission. And indeed, a group from England, they performed microwave experiment to demonstrate this idea. It's a very simple idea. So now our approach is, can we have another mechanism? Yeah, the SACS. The paper is published about 4 years ago. Now before going into details, again we think about this problem analytically. Suppose you have a layer of B layer which has a negative epsilon. Certainly, it only supports evanescent wave, so that the B layer is opaque for photons. Now imagine if you attach an A layer on the front of this layer. If the effect media description is one-way, the effective Dulles constant will be an average of these two layers. So that if you can choose, you can tune the effective the Dulles constant of A layer, so you can make this condition to satisfy. But this idea, although it's very simple, do not rigorously apply. If you solve the wave transmission properties through this AB layer rigorously, you will find that perfect transmission can never happen. The physics is very simple. Suppose you have a wave incident from here, and if you want to make this AB layer totally transparent, you have to make the wave scattered by A layer completely compensated by the wave scattered by B layer. Immediately you will notice that this is not possible, because the A layer is located on this phase plane, but B layer is located on a different phase plane. So the scattering wave must have a finite phase difference, so that they cannot cancel completely rigorously. If you understand this picture, you immediately find that if you add another layer, which is also A layer, to the back of the B layer to form a symmetric AB structure, then although this A and this B scattering wave have a final phase difference, and this A and also this B also have another phase difference, fortunately, this A plus this A, they do not have any phase difference with this B. Indeed, if you solve this equation analytically, you will find that T equals the perfect transparency indeed can be supported by this symmetric AB structure. Indeed, we can have a situation where the total transmission happens. We calculate a few patterns when the perfect transmission happens. We found that there's two modes satisfy this total transmission patterns. And in terms of the symmetry, actually the two modes are symmetric mode and anti-symmetric mode, which is quite similar to the quantum particle case. And one particular characteristic of this high transmission is that it is always accompanied by a very high magnetic field. You can see that at the interface between AB layer, the magnetic field is enhanced by a factor. Okay, the question now is how can we realize these AB layers? We perform this, we demonstrate this idea in microwave frequency gene. For the B layer, because in the microwave frequency gene, the perfect metal cannot be a negative epsilon system because it's actually a perfect metal. And we can use the magnetic mesh to model a negative epsilon system. Indeed, you found that if you model this magnetic mesh structure by this homogeneous system with this effective dielectric constant, we found that we can describe the experiment very well. How about the A layer? For A layer, we use the resonant metamaterials. We fabricate a periodicity lattice of the H structure, and as I already mentioned to you in this morning, that this H structure can be viewed as a two-level structure. And actually, it is very good electrical resonance metamaterials. So indeed, we found that the transmission can be well described by this effective dielectric constant of this form. So now we have both B layer and E and A layer. Then we combine these two to form a symmetric AB layer. And we first performed FD simulation, and we found indeed that at this situation, we have two very sharp total transmission peaks, and here we have these two peaks merged together, and after critical thickness, and then we do not have any total transmission at all. And we perform experiments, and we found that indeed, in most of cases, the experiment is agree with the theory quite well. However, in this case, we do not have two peaks because the two peaks are too narrow, cannot be detected. So the experimental peak is only one. But anyway, you can find that at these particular situations, we do have a perfect transmission peak here. And this is quite unusual. You remember that here, at this frequency, around 4 gigahertz. If you look back to the A layer, you will find the B layer is not transparent. And again, even for A layer, it's also not transparent. Yet these two opaque media, when they form together to form a symmetric AB structure, they can become totally transparent. So this is not that easy to understand. We found two unique features of this total transparency. The first one is almost accompanied by the high magnetic field. Another one is more interesting. We found that this high transmission peak frequency is quite insensitive to the incident angle. And this one makes our structure quite different from the previous mechanism. For example, the SP resonance. And after our work, there were quite follow-up experimental confirmations. We did our a confirmation in microwave frequency, and immediately there's a group from US. They did an IR experiment to find an enhanced near field enhanced transmission by this mechanism. And 1 year after, an English group they did an experiment in the visible light, and indeed they found that there's two transparency frequencies which work together when the thickness is larger than the critical thickness. And they even found that this mechanism is valid for all kinds of waves, including microwaves. Okay, let me transfer to another mechanism, the photon tunneling from all-dimensional wavelength fractal apertures. And this work is done in collaboration with Hong Kong group when I was still in Hong Kong. And this is the picture of Professor Wen Weijia I just found from his webpage. He did all the experiments, and I did all the theory. But still, the background is motivation is like this. Many years ago, a famous professor, Beta, he calculated the light transmission through a wavelength aperture, and he found that his theory told us that when the aperture size is much smaller than half wavelength, the light cannot pass through. Now, recently, I have already shown you that Erson's group told us that if it is not a single aperture, it's an aperture array, then the Bragg scattering can help us to excite the surface plasma so that we can have high transmission. So the question is, can we have any other mechanism? And you can see that the aperture is always very simple to be a circular or be rectangular. So our question is, do we have an aperture shape? Does play any role? So we ask ourselves, what happens if the aperture has a fractal shape? So the experiment is Professor Wen Weijia, they did experiments to fabricate the IR samples of a fractal aperture plate and also the fractal aperture plate in microwave. And he performed an experiment, and he found that even when the wavelength is much longer than the aperture size, still he can observe some sort of high transmission peaks. And this is a transmission spectrum measured in IR frequency, and this is transmission spectrum measured in microwave frequency. In both cases, we found a high transmission. Remember that at this wavelength, the wavelength is much longer than the aperture size. And also, this high transmission has some quite unusual features. For example, if you, let me go back to the aperture. If you cut all these metals away, and then you form this rectangular aperture, naively you will think that you have removed many metals, so that the system must be more transparent. However, that's not true. If you remove these metals, you will find there's no high transmission at all. So that's the first thing to observe, that no transmission for square hole. Even the area for air is much larger than the fractal aperture. Another observation is that the transmission frequency is insensitive to the incident angle, periodicity, and thickness. This is experimental for the incident angle, and this is for periodicity, and also for thickness, it's also quite incident angle. So we found that analytic physics, previously in our 2005 paper, we explained this kind of phenomena by a so-called K=0 mode tunneling. And we found that why such kind of perfect transmission can happen. If you look at the field distribution inside the aperture, you will find that there's no phase change when perfect transmission appears across the fractal plate. That means the KZ along the fractal aperture, if you can view the fractal aperture as a sort of waveguide, That means the waveguide has a 0 k vector. So that's why the total transmission peak is independent of the thickness, because the k equals 0. So no matter how long the thickness, it doesn't matter. So that's why we call that this k equal to 0 tunneling mode. And indeed, if you have this k equals to 0 mode, and you can perform a very simple analytical calculation, you will find it support perfect transmission. Okay, this is why the fractal approach can support this high transmission. Now, in recent years, actually, many years has passed, and I have already mentioned that we studied this system again, and we found that this kind of system can be viewed as a kind of plasmonic system. So we have a quite different physical picture on this for this system. You will find this kind of system can be viewed as a plasmonic, and the plasmonic resonance is like this, and the plasmonic resonance is very flat, so that it's quite insensitive to the incident angle. The incident angle means you can vary the kx, k parallel. However, for each k parallel, the SPP resonance is very flat. So that's why the high transmission is insensitive to the incident angle. And this picture can also explain why our transmission frequency is insensitive to periodicity and also thickness. And we performed the calculation of this SPP band structure, and we found that this SPP resonance is indeed quite insensitive. It's only governed by the local resonance of the fractal aperture itself. So this gives us another view of this high transmission. Yeah, actually, because we have surface plasma band like this, and we also have a Bragg scattering like this, and then when plane wave come in, it can couple to this surface plasma. And this surface plasma can help us to perfectly transmit the EM wave from one side to another side. Okay, let me go into the third part, which is about the resonance-induced transparency through opaque waveguide. This work is done by my student Zhou from Fudan University. Now the background. About in 2002, there's a Spanish group who did an experiment and theory to show that if you put something inside a waveguide cutoff, originally the waveguide cutoff cannot transmit anything, because at cutoff the wave inside is always advancing, so nothing can transmit from this waveguide cutoff. However, this guy put some splitting rejoined SRR inside this structure, and they found that when the SRR are on resonance, they found high transmission through this structure. So they explain this high transmission, high transparency by a simple picture. They view that they show that the effective data constant of a hollow waveguide is actually a negative epsilon material, and it's effective E plasma like this. So if you can put a SR inside, when mu is negative, you already have a negative epsilon. So when double negative appears, so you have high transmission. So this is the original explanation by this Spanish group. We look at this problem into more details, and we ask ourselves, is that true, always true that the waveguide is E resonance, E plasma? Is that always true? And if it's not true, do we have other mechanisms leading to such kind of extraordinary transparencies? This is our motivation of the study. Then we study the system first analytically, and we study a metallic waveguide filled in with some uniaxial metamaterial insertion, and basically this is quite general uniaxial metamaterial insertion, and we solve the metric equation and we solve everything. So basically the wave inside this material waveguide can be solved analytically. Then for the TE polarized wave, we found the dispersion like this. And we also look at the energy flow, which is given by the point vector. So I think these two equations are very complicated, and you do not have any kind of sense about this situation. Now let me remind you, if you consider another situation, since we want to characterize this complex structure by an effective medium, then we just consider how wave behaves in the effective medium, in the effective homogeneous medium. Suppose we have a homogeneous medium with epsilon bar, mu bar as its effective properties, then we can solve both dispersion relations and also the Poynting vectors. Okay, so that's very easy to obtain. Now, if you want to characterize this structure, this complex structure, by a homogeneous medium, you just compare this equation with this equation. So you have two parameters, epsilon bar and mu bar, and you have two equations which is given by dispersion and energy flow. So you can solve it uniquely. Then we can solve by comparing these equations with the original equation. We found that actually the hollow waveguide, the waveguide with insertion, can be modeled by this equation. This is, quite interesting because for this structure, indeed, if we do not have any insertion at all, we indeed have a approximate form of the dielectric constant, and mu is just equal to 1. So this explains the Spanish group very well. However, you have to consider another polarization, the TM polarization. For the TM mode, if you do everything the same, and you will find the conclusion is just opposite. For TM mode, you find that now the permittivity is a constant, and the permeability, the magnetic permeability, takes the approximate form. So the conclusion is now, for the hollow waveguide, you have to separately consider the TM polarized wave and TE polarized wave. While for T polarized wave, it indeed behaves like the E plasma. For TM polarized wave, it actually behaves like M plasma. It has active mu, actually. So this is the summary. I already showed you that for different polarized wave, the hollow waveguide behaves differently. So this is not just what we have been taught in the textbook. For the hollow waveguide, for TE polarized, it's an E plasma. For TM, it's actually a magnetic plasma. And then you immediately found that for this two environment, you have basically 4 situations to make the whole system transparent. You can insert a hollow waveguide with the E resonance, and you also can insert with mu resonance. And the same thing can be done for this TM polarized wave. And then you have 4 different situations to make the whole system transparent. Let me just show one example. For example, for these situations, the background is epsilon is negative. And if you can insert a E resonance, and then when the E resonance is positively infinite, then you will make the system transparent. So now how can we design? We have designed some kind of E resonators. This is what we designed for the E resonance. Again, we performed simulation and found that this structure can be well described by this form. And this is what we designed for the M resonance. Basically, it's the SR structures. And then we again go to Zhejiang University to collaborate with Professor Ren, and then we perform an experiment to identify this idea. This is the waveguide, and we insert some E resonator and M resonator. Oh no M resonator. We only insert E resonators. So this is the experiment result. For case 1, remember that the waveguide is E plasma, so that the background has a negative epsilon. We insert a E resonance, and we found that indeed at waveguide below cutoff, we have a high transmission peak. This is a FDD simulation. This is the experiment. So indeed, these two results are coincident with each other very well. For just a same, exactly same geometry, still we consider the waveguide with the E resonance. However, we consider different polarized wave. now the picture completely changed. Because the TM polarized wave, the waveguide behaves like magnetic plasma. So then, only when you insertion has a negative epsilon, you can have a transparent band. So indeed, we found that the transparent band here appears above the resonant frequency. So if you forget the previous figure, let me remind you that here, the transmission peak transparency is below the resonance, which is indicate that here the epsilon is positive. But here, exactly the same geometry, you only change the polarization of the incident wave. You found that the transmission peak here is above the resonance. So I will not bother you with all the details. I just want you to believe that basically all the 4 situations have all been demonstrated by our experiment. No, only 2 by our experiment. All these are demonstrated by the simulations. So this picture is correct. Okay, this conclusion of this part, we have proposed 3 different mechanisms for extraordinary transparencies, and I have introduced to you the AB tunneling, the K2 to 0 tunneling, and also the resin-induced tunneling through the opaque waveguide. And all these phenomena are demonstrated experimentally. And this is some related publications. And before you take some questions, let me give some slides on the last part. So finally, I go to the last part, perspective. I have to mention that this perspective is quite personal. This is just my personal viewpoint. The question I ask is, what's next for Metamaterials? So from my personal opinion, I believe that there's several trends in the current state-of-the-art research of the Metamaterial. The first part is some people go to the high frequency. To go to the visible and terahertz, for example. This is Professor Padilla's group. The total absorber, the perfect absorber proposed by Padilla's group, which is working for the terahertz frequency, and also some groups are working for the optical frequency materials. And also, you have learned from, I think you have learned a lot from Professor C.D. Chen's talk, that there are indeed some fancy works which is based on the transformation optics and invisibility cloak. And still, there are quite a lot of works which can be done by this fancy new idea of transformation optics. I think still, many people can do such kind of stuff. And also, from my personal perspective, I think the Metamaterials are now merging with other hot research fields. For example, it becomes merging with plasmonics and nanophotonics. When the system becomes smaller, and the conventional plasmonics, you have to combine with the Metamaterials concept to enhance some of the functionality. And also some trends to study the nonlinear effect. The nonlinear effect is quite a rich research field now. For the Metamaterials, you also have enhanced magnetic field, also have some kind of new phenomena. Because I came from the physics department, I always think about how can these fancy things link to quantum theory. And I think already there are quite something happens. In the quantum field theory, theory, there's quite a lot of discussion on the very phase problem. And now, for the EM wave also, I think some people have already noticed the very phase phenomenon. And also, some people are beginning to study the interplay between the EM, the Metamaterials with other quantum systems, for example, quantum dot, and also an English group led by Professor Zhou proposed the idea of spacer. which is a combination of the plasma resins and also the active media, and also many other crazy things. I think this is the following trends which can help us to do for next material. So let me conclude all my lectures. I want to make sure that from my lecture you can understand what is metamaterial at least. So metamaterial, the idea is we can use structure to control its optical properties. And the control properties is very anomalous that do not exist in nature. So this is the whole concept of the metamaterials. And such kind of metamaterial could have very anomalous wave properties, including propagating waves, surface wave, and wave impedance field. And I think the field is still expanding because it's merging with other hot topics, and also there are some other trends now. However, I have to say that it's still quite a lot of challenges faced by the metamaterial research. The first one is the real materials has to have loss and dispersive. And the loss is a quite big issue now. No matter how good prediction you have, you do not have good materials, you cannot achieve this. So that's the big challenge here. Another challenge is about structure fabrication. For the microwave samples, the structure is very easy to fabricate. It's just print on the some circuit. However, for the high frequencies, the nanofabrication restriction has restricted us to fabricate good samples. So that's another challenge. And also, there's some challenges of coming from the complexities from metamaterials compared with conventional means. Some audience already asked me a question. So what's your polarization control compared with the conventional means? Because the metamaterial is so complex. Yeah, that's a question raised by one of the referees. Okay. And also there's a lot of other challenges in this field. Despite of this, I still believe that metamaterial is still an active research field. I'm so glad that so many young people are here to learn the knowledge of metamaterials. Okay, finally, let me advise. I'm eagerly looking for smart postdocs, so if you are interested, please send me an email. And I want to show you a picture. This is a picture of my group. Yeah, I'm taking the close of the sun's maybe it's us. So. Oh, with that, I want to thank you for all your attention.
Are there questions to all of the topics covered in those lectures? Yes?
Is it a unique property of the incident independent of your H-shape structures?
I don't think so. Yeah, actually, it is. If you replace the active structure by other kind of systems, you also can have kind of incident angle insensitive phenomenon. However, if you, we understand this property by the SPV structure. The surveillance property is better in the situation when the surveillance is better, then the incidence is weak. So that's why we use vector structures.
But why when you when you make the H to be closer, then why I think there is still a resonance.
Into what?
You cut the edge to be some slits. You said that there will not be any written peak. You said that the peak appears when you cut the.
Oh yeah. To not cut, just yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. You mean I destroy the extra, the fractal structure?
No, I thought that.
Replace.
Yeah, I thought should still be some resonance, but out of the region we started.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're right, but that's not kind of resonance actually. It's very smooth because it's not sharp. You can calculate by yourself. It's not so sharp because if you replace the whole area by a square, and then actually the scattering from different sides will interface with each other. So that eventually it's like a smooth change. There's no features at all. You can have a try.
It is possible that the Henry's work there is also a pragmatic in the Henry's work, but you didn't point out it. Besides the FP resonance, there is still
FT resonance.
besides the FP resonance, there are two peaks. One is
Two kind of peaks. Yeah.
Yes.
One is at subcosmos, the other is at the FP resonance.
So I mean that the absence work, there are two peaks and both.
Absence work, only one peak because absence work, the difference between absence work and penetrative work is like this. In the absence work, the aperture is all-dimensional wavelength. So there's no way to let the wave inside the hole to become propagated. However, for slit, for the penetrative structure, there's one particular correlation inside which the wave is propagating. So that's why this structure can support the.
But there are also some shape the hole.
For the hole, there's no shape resonance because the shape resonance you have to have the lambda over 2 restriction. So that's beyond the salvation region. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Professor, as you said, you mean the hollow waveguide can be viewed as the negative epsilon material. But in the hollow waveguides, the electric field is not a plane wave. But in the ideal negative epsilon material, that would be a plane wave. So I want to know, does this effect influence the final equivalence?
Yeah, I think this is quite a good question. Yeah, actually, originally we make the analogy just inside the waveguide, so we do not consider the field pattern at all. I can only tell you that if you make the whole things to become, for example, waveguide array, then I think the analogy could be better. If you have a real waveguide, then you have a plane wave shine on, and inside which you do not care about the other directions, and then this analogy could be quite good. And for your particular, for this single waveguide, yeah, I think you are right. This analogy is not perfect.
Are there more questions? If not, let us thank our speaker again.